This is a true story of a young man sent to the most brutal prison of the 20th century, isolated on a remote island where inmates were barely allowed to move. Yet he never gave up hope of escape. In the remote northeastern part of South America lies an isolated island completely surrounded by sea. On this island stands a heavily guarded offshore prison. From the late 19th century to the mid-20th century, the French government used this place as a penal colony for dangerous criminals and political prisoners. The story begins in 1931 in Paris. The main character, Henri, also known as Papillon, is a professional pickpocket who moves in the criminal underworld, stealing valuables for mafia bosses. During one of his heists, Papillon kept a few stolen diamonds for himself, but was caught by one of the mafia boss's trusted men. In a fit of rage, the boss framed Papillon for a murder he had committed himself. As a result, Papillon was sentenced to life imprisonment and would spend the rest of his life behind bars. His destination is that infamous offshore prison in French Guiana. From the moment the sentence was handed down, Papillon was determined to escape. While waiting to be transferred to the prison, Papillon met a fellow inmate named Julot, who also had plans to escape and had done quite a bit of research. Julot told Papillon that to break out, they would need a large amount of money to bribe guards and buy a boat to flee the island. According to Julot, many wealthy inmates, in order to secure favors in prison, would wrap cash in special ways and hide it in their bodies to avoid police inspection. Among the dozens of prisoners about to be sent to the island, there was a nervous, thin man with glasses named Dega. He was a con artist in the financial industry and also a millionaire. Many prisoners believed that Dega had hidden cash inside his body and wanted to kill him to get it for their own escape attempts. Papillon naturally didn't want to commit murder, but inspired by Julot's words, he came up with a way to make money. Soon, Papillon, Dega, and the other prisoners were loaded onto the ship headed for the island prison. On board, Papillon secretly approached Dega and honestly warned him that others were targeting him and offered to protect him for a fee, but Dega didn't believe him and rejected the offer. He thought that even if someone did have bad intentions, the escorting police wouldn't stand by and let it happen. However, Dega soon realized how naive he was. That very night, a burly prisoner took advantage of everyone being asleep and used a hidden table knife to stab a frail companion to death. He then cut open the victim's abdomen and retrieved the hidden cash inside. The escorting officers, hoping for a cut of the money, turned a blind eye. Dega, who witnessed everything, was stunned. The next morning, he proactively sought out the strong and capable Papillon and hired him as a personal bodyguard. Papillon happily agreed. It was the perfect match of brawn and brain. Dega needed protection, and Papillon needed Dega to finance his escape. That night, the same burly killer targeted Dega. Just as he was about to make his move, Papillon tackled him and fought him off. Having grown up in the criminal world, Papillon was no stranger to fights. The brute was no match for him and was quickly pinned to the ground and beaten until the guards arrived and separated them. Although Papillon was punished by being denied food for a day, the incident made all the other prisoners realize that Dega had hired a formidable bodyguard. From that point on, no one dared to target Dega again. After many days at sea, the ship full of prisoners finally arrived at the island where the prison was located. As soon as the prisoners set foot in the facility, the warden gave them a stern group lecture. He declared that every batch of prisoners arriving here included madmen who dreamed of escaping, but no one had ever succeeded. He warned that anyone caught attempting to escape for the first time would be locked in solitary confinement for 2 years. A second failed escape attempt would result in 5 years of solitary, followed by transfer to another completely isolated island to be left to die. Furthermore, if a prisoner killed a guard during an escape, they would be immediately executed by beheading. After hearing the warden's terrifying warning, most prisoners gave up any thoughts of escaping, but there were still a few determined to flee the island, Papillon among them. Papillon tried to convince Dega to escape with him, but Dega believed that his wife and lawyer would do everything possible to get him out legally, so he declined Papillon's proposal. One day, while Papillon was doing forced outdoor labor, he ran into a pimp and a group of indigenous women. He later learned from other inmates that, due to the dull and monotonous life on the island, the guards occasionally allowed a pimp from outside the island to bring in some women for services. Papillon found an opportunity to strike up a connection with the pimp. Eventually, the pimp agreed that if Papillon could pay him 4,000 francs, he would be willing to ferry him off the island by boat, but only if Papillon could first figure out how to escape from the prison and make it to the dock. Before Papillon could come up with a proper escape plan, an unexpected incident occurred inside the prison. One morning, the warden suddenly gathered all the prisoners in the execution yard. It turned out that Papillon's acquaintance, Julot, had been caught during an escape attempt, and in the process, he had killed 2 prison guards. The warden decided to make an example of him and ordered Julot to be publicly beheaded. Many of the inmates here were hardened criminals with blood on their hands, so scenes like this didn't shock them much. But Dega, the white-collar fraudster, was terrified. His face turned pale and his whole body trembled uncontrollably. His reaction didn't escape the warden's attention. With a sense of dark humor, the warden deliberately assigned Dega alongside Papillon to handle and dispose of Julot's body. The 2 of them had to carry the corpse into the nearby mountains for burial. Along the way, Dega became increasingly horrified as he watched the blood seep through the burial shroud. Eventually, he froze on the spot, paralyzed by fear. The guard overseeing them noticed Dega's condition and immediately pulled out a leather whip, lashing him without mercy. Seeing his financial backer being beaten to a bloody mess, Papillon acted on impulse. He instinctively picked up a rock and smashed it hard into the guard's head. The guard collapsed to the ground from the heavy blow and didn't move again. Seeing that the guard he struck was motionless, Papillon was terrified. He realized he had accidentally killed a prison officer. In a state of panic, he dropped the body without thinking and fled alone toward the coast. However, he was quickly noticed by patrolling guards nearby, who immediately started chasing him and opened fire. To avoid the bullets, Papillon jumped into a nearby river and let the current carry him downstream. Miraculously, he managed to shake off the pursuing guards, but escaping the island required a boat. Under the cover of night, Papillon made his way to the dock, where he met the pimp he had made an agreement with earlier. However, in his rush, he hadn't had time to ask Dega for the promised payment. Now he could only beg the pimp to help him escape first, and promised to pay him later once he returned to Paris. Unexpectedly, the pimp readily agreed. Just as Papillon was happily about to board the boat, several guards suddenly descended from the shadows and captured him. It turned out the pimp had already been bought off by the warden and was never going to help any prisoner escape. Even if Papillon had come with the money, he likely would have been caught anyway. Papillon was quickly brought before the warden. Fortunately, the guard Papillon had hit with the rock hadn't died. He had only passed out. Because of this, the warden decided not to execute him on the spot. Instead, he kindly sentenced him to 2 years of solitary confinement. The solitary cell was a tiny pitch-black room, barely 4 square meters. Papillon was forced to endure 2 full years inside. Each night, he could only sleep on a hard wooden board. Each meal consisted of a thin vegetable porridge that barely kept him alive. The guard he had once knocked out came by regularly, using him as a punching bag to vent his anger. Papillon could tolerate the hunger and the beatings. What tormented him the most was the silence. He was forbidden from speaking to anyone. The isolation was unbearable. All he could do was count the days on his fingers, one by one. 2 months later, something unexpected happened. One day, when the guard delivered his food, Papillon found something different in the bucket. Alongside the usual bland porridge was half a coconut and a small note, which stated that from now on he would receive a coconut every day. There was no signature, but Papillon instantly knew. It had to be from Dega. He must have bribed the guards to send this little extra food. That half coconut and Dega's small act of kindness reignited Papillon's will to live and to escape. He kept thinking about what the warden had said. If wasting one's life was truly a crime, then perhaps these 2 years of solitude had been his punishment. He had paid his dues. From now on, he was determined to escape this prison and begin a new, more meaningful life. To prepare, Papillon began exercising daily to build his strength for another escape attempt. But peace didn't last long. Not long after, during a routine inspection, the warden unexpectedly discovered the coconut hidden in Papillon's food bucket. This unexpected discovery enraged the warden. In a fit of fury, he accidentally killed the guard who had accepted the bribe. He then turned his wrath toward Papillon, demanding to know who had bribed the guard to deliver half a coconut to him every day. But Papillon refused to betray his kind-hearted friend and remained silent. His attitude only made the warden angrier. As punishment, the warden immediately ordered Papillon's daily food rations to be cut in half. 3 months later, after prolonged hunger, Papillon became skin and bones. He looked like he could die at any moment. Just when he was fading into despair, the warden suddenly appeared before him with a steaming bowl of meat soup. He told Papillon that if he revealed the name of the person who had provided the coconut, he could enjoy delicious meat soup every day. Despite his hunger, Papillon resisted the temptation and still refused to betray Dega. To further break his spirit, the warden ordered the prison guards to seal off the skylight in the solitary cell. Now Papillon was in a pitch-black room in the truest sense. No light, no sound. His mental state quickly deteriorated. He began to hallucinate, but even then, he never gave Dega up. At last, after enduring this extreme torment, Papillon survived the 2 full years of confinement. When he was finally released, he was barely clinging to life and could not even walk without the support of guards. He was sent to the infirmary for treatment. After a period of recovery, Papillon's body gradually healed, but his mind seemed broken. He acted completely dull and slow, as if he had lost his sanity. Upon hearing this, Dega rushed to visit him in the infirmary. By this time, Dega had used his financial knowledge to become the warden's personal financial advisor. Because of the warden's trust, he was allowed to move freely throughout the prison, except in solitary confinement. Dega was deeply grateful that Papillon never gave him away. After expressing his gratitude, the once blank-eyed Papillon suddenly returned to his normal self. He quietly told Dega that he had only been pretending to be insane, to fool the guards and the medical staff so he could stay in the infirmary and find the right moment to escape. Dega was delighted to hear this. He then revealed that 2 nights from now, the warden would host a film screening for the guards and prisoners. That would be the perfect time to escape. The sound from the movie would cover the noise of their breakout. This time, Dega decided to escape with Papillon. As it turned out, Dega's wife had long been having an affair with his lawyer. The two had lied to him all along about working to get him out. Dega had only recently discovered their betrayal, and now he had nothing left to wait for. He was ready to escape. To increase their chances of success, Papillon recruited 2 other inmates to join their plan. They were his fellow patients in the infirmary, Maturette and Celier. A guard in the infirmary had always had inappropriate desires toward Maturette. So Maturette's task was to seduce him and steal the keys. And yeah, the plan must have worked, given the nature of the distraction. Celier, meanwhile, had connections with fishermen on the island and could procure a boat for their getaway. Finally, the night of the escape arrived. First, Maturette lured the infirmary guard into the restroom. Then Papillon and Celier seized the moment to knock the guard unconscious and steal the keys. They then escaped the infirmary. At the same time, Dega, pretending to deliver a message from the warden, requested a bottle of wine from the prison kitchen. He slipped in a sleeping pill he had bought earlier from the infirmary and offered the drugged wine to the guards at the main gate, claiming it was a gift from the warden. After the guards drank the wine, they soon fell into a deep sleep. Dega took the gate keys from them and joined the others, Papillon, Maturette, and Celier, to make their escape. They managed to buy a fishing boat from a local fisherman. However, the boat was in poor condition, and before they had rowed very far, it started to leak and fall apart. As it became clear they might all drown, Celier made a grim suggestion: throw Dega overboard to lighten the load. From Celier's point of view, Dega was the weakest of the group. He had even injured his leg during their escape. Keeping him aboard would only slow them down. But Papillon, who had long regarded Dega as his most trusted friend, firmly refused to sacrifice him. In fact, to protect him, he fought Celier, but Papillon wasn't quite as strong. Celier got the upper hand and began choking him with both hands. Just as Papillon was about to be strangled to death, Dega pulled out a small knife he had hidden for self-defense and stabbed Celier from behind, killing him instantly. Papillon, gasping for breath, recovered and threw Celier's body into the sea. With the extra weight gone, the leaking from the fishing boat slowed down and the crisis was temporarily averted. But just then, a sudden storm rolled in. The boat rocked violently, and before long, all 3 men were knocked unconscious. When they finally came to, they discovered they had been rescued by a group of local women and brought to another island. Just as they were starting to feel hopeful, a team of prison guards showed up. Turns out the women had realized the 3 were escaped convicts and reported them. Faced with overwhelming force, Maturette tried to run and was shot dead on the spot. Papillon and Dega had no choice but to surrender. Since this was Papillon's second escape attempt, he was sentenced to 5 more years in solitary confinement. Dega, on the other hand, was sent by the warden to Devil's Island, a place of complete isolation, where prisoners were simply left to die. The warden believed Dega had betrayed his trust and deserved the harshest punishment. Years passed. The long 5 years eventually came to an end. By now, Papillon's hair had turned completely white. He looked as though he had aged 50 years, but the warden still wasn't done with him. After solitary confinement, Papillon was sent to Devil's Island, where Dega had been sent before him. Devil's Island had no guards, no fences, because the island itself was a natural prison. Surrounded by towering cliffs and shark-infested waters, escape was virtually impossible. Most prisoners who were sent there eventually went insane from hopelessness and isolation. To Papillon's relief, his old friend Dega had managed to hold on to his sanity after all these years. Despite everything, he remained calm and rational. But Papillon hadn't given up on the idea of escape. Every day, he would walk along the shore, watching the tides, studying the ocean. One day, he noticed a pattern in the tide's movement, and it gave him an idea. Excited, he told Dega that if they could build a simple raft, they might be able to drift away with the current and return to the mainland. They would still need a little luck to avoid the waves that crashed violently against the cliffs and to escape the sharks lurking below. Moved by Papillon's determination, Dega agreed to help build the boat. Together, they found 2 large bags made from palm leaves and gathered many empty coconuts. They stuffed the coconuts into the bags, creating 2 makeshift rafts. When everything was ready, they dragged the rafts down to the shore. Just as they were about to leave, Dega suddenly told Papillon that he had gotten used to life on Devil's Island and no longer wished to leave.
I need to stay. I belong here.
Papillon was stunned. He couldn't tell whether Dega truly preferred to stay, feared being a burden, or had simply lost the courage to escape after so many years of confinement. But to Papillon, the reason didn't matter. As someone who deeply valued their friendship, he chose to respect Dega's decision. Without saying much, he gave Dega a heartfelt hug, then took one of the rafts and leapt into the sea. Fortunately, he wasn't crushed by waves or attacked by sharks. Lying on his coconut raft, Papillon let the ocean current carry him farther and farther away. Watching his friend disappear into the horizon, Dega felt a sense of genuine comfort and relief. Years later, an elderly Papillon, now frail and silver-haired, walked into a publisher's office with a manuscript in hand. He wanted to publish a memoir. After reading the manuscript, the publisher was shocked. He couldn't believe that the extraordinary story within was someone's true life experience. This story comes from the 2017 critically acclaimed crime film Papillon, a remake of the 1973 classic of the same name. Both films were based on a true story, the autobiography of Henri Charrière, whose real-life experiences are said to be even more dramatic and intense than those shown in the movie. It's worth noting that the 2017 version of Papillon, like the original, received widespread praise. Because it was based on true events, the prison break methods shown in the film weren't overly dramatized. They were portrayed with stark realism, which is part of what makes the movie so remarkable. Additionally, it's believed that Stephen King drew inspiration from the 1973 Papillon and Henri Charrière's real-life story when writing his legendary prison novel, The Shawshank Redemption.